Hey everyone, hope you had a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, whatever it is when you're listening to this. I hope it has been great. If you're from some different faith background, I'm not really sure why you're listening to us, but hey, we're glad you're here. And we hope that you had a great holiday too with whatever you celebrate. We know it's been a big travel downtime type of week this week. So we wanted to give you a bonus episode to wrap up 2024. If you're new around here, welcome to the Tension Podcast. We are a show that acknowledges most of life and faith is lived in the tension between the two extremes. Each week, we look at what many of us were taught growing up in evangelical churches. We weigh it against what our current culture is saying, and we try to find what Jesus has for us in the tension between the two. If we haven't met, my name is Jonathan Carone, and we're joined, as always, by our co-host, Mr. Eric Williams. Eric, go ahead and say hey to the people.
Well, I just want to make sure that we're all out there surviving the war on Christmas. So just make sure you've got your battle lines drawn, and anytime somebody offers you a cup that's not, it's just a red cup that doesn't have Christmas stuff on it from your favorite chain coffee shop, or somebody says Happy Holidays. Hope you have your Merry Christmas in your smart comeback voice ready to go.
I think the war we should be more concerned about people surviving right now is the one of their kids being home for school for 2 weeks. And by the time this comes out, it will be just enough to, they've played with the toys from Christmas. The structure is completely gone. There's still a week and a half before school starts back up. So good luck to all of you out there. I'm trying to survive. I hope you are as well.
Yeah, the time where you're I don't even know what day it is. Literally,
when's the last time I changed pants?
Right, exactly. I think the most important thing I had to worry about this week was making sure that the garbage got out to the curb on time, because God knows if you miss the post holiday garbage week, I don't know. I mean,
we're recording this the Friday before Christmas, and I made sure the recycling bin was at the road today because we had so many boxes coming out of it that
right.
I don't know what we would have done next week.
Right. Yep. I'm with you. Anyway.
All right. Well, this fall, we looked at the idea that cultural Christianity is killing the American church. We define cultural Christianity two ways. If you weren't with us then, we'll catch you up now. First way is spiritually immature Christians who have been discipled more by evangelical culture than the actual Bible. The second is Christians who are more concerned with applying their Christian preferences to the culture than they are in achieving unity in Christ with those who might have different preferences. Then, after former President Trump won the 2024 election, a victory we all saw being led by cultural Christians because 81% of white evangelicals voted for him. We did an episode, How to Respond When Cultural Christianity Wins, and I was extremely surprised by the response to that episode. It was our most listened to episode, most commented on episode in well over a year. So the messages that you all sent after that show were incredible, and I just want to say thank you for that before we move into today. But we have been living in kind of negative land around here for the last little bit, talking about problems. Today, we want to look at how do we move forward? How does the evangelical church heal? What has to happen for us to move past where we are right now? Because every metric shows the American evangelical church is not in a healthy place. Before we get to that, though, if you like the show, please leave us a rating wherever you listen or watch. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, it'd be a huge help if you wrote up a small review. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button on today's video. All right, today's going to be one of those episodes where I have a bunch of thoughts I want to share, and then Eric's going to react to those thoughts and try to get more out of me, because that's what he's really good at, is reacting and getting more out of me. Today we're going to talk about 4 big ideas I think have to happen for the American church to heal. I've shared these with a few pastors, and I was encouraged by their acceptance and agreement with them. So now we're bringing them to you. Before we get into them, you'll notice the first 3 are focused on pastors and church leaders. That is intentional. What leaders do in moderation, their followers do in success or do in excess. When pastors create a culture in a certain direction, their people often fall in line with that culture, good or bad. You kind of see, we've seen the bad of that. This is the way we can change things moving forward. Eric, anything you want to say before we jump into these ideas?
I think you need to repeat the leader church line again, because I don't think that I mean, we've said it before in the podcast, but it is so important not only for leaders, but church staff, church volunteers, people who are in churches.
It's a phrase that when I was an intern right out of seminary, the pastor I worked for told me this probably a month into me working there. So my first ministry experience was shaped by this idea. And it's what leaders do in moderation, their followers do in excess. So what leaders say is okay a little bit, followers do a lot. What leaders model, their followers do even more. And so that's why these first three things focus on what pastors and church leaders, their role in this healing.
Yeah, and I think that has a lot to do with, one of the concepts we've shared before, like that I always remember Matt Chandler saying, where he was like, I think my job as a pastor is like, I'm right I've got my congregation where we need to be like 2 or 3 weeks out of the year. The other 49 weeks, it's a pendulum where it's like, no, don't do this. And then everybody swings all the way past where you need to be the other side. Whoa, don't do this. And so it's like, whatever we say, whatever the leadership says, whether you're in a church or in a business, it's like the culture is going to be determined by the voice at the top, and then it's going to flow out. And it's mostly going to be wrong. So just because that communication doesn't go out. So I love that we're focusing on pastors and leaders. And I wouldn't even say this is necessarily like ordained, on staff, paid
This is
staff.
elders. This is small group leaders. This is any type of spiritual leadership.
Yeah. Or even, I don't want to use this word because it's kind of means something different in our social media terms, but like any influencer in your church. So not just somebody that's got a social media account, but like someone of influence that you would look up to. Okay, go ahead.
All right. First thing we need, pastors and leaders who are open to wrestling with and questioning ideas instead of focusing on being the authority on the topic.
Oof.
Let me say it again. We need pastors and leaders who are open to wrestling with and questioning ideas instead of focusing on being the authority on the topic. For the last 50 years at least, we've seen the quote, man of God type of pastor. We've seen how that guy is the guy that everyone looks to. Pastor said it's this way. Pastor has this interpretation, so this is what we're going to believe. And we've seen how that often turns to abuse, whether that is emotional, spiritual, or even sexual in some cases, unfortunately, many cases. When the man of God has the final authority, he can't be open to new applications. And what we are learning is our theology can be the same it's always been. Our belief in God can be the same it has always been. Our doctrine can be pretty similar. Our application changes as the culture changes because new ideas and new problems come up. So we have to be open to, well, in this context, how do we apply this? Do we apply it the same way we always have, or can we learn from something we've done in the past? When the man of God is the final authority, he's not open to new applications. He doesn't welcome questions, and a lot of times takes offense to those seeking answers. What we know about our religious culture today is we are connected to more information about the Bible, church history, and the questions around our faith in ways that no generation has ever been before. And with that extra information comes extra questions, both positive and negative. And to assume one person has all the answers is the definition of arrogance.
Yep.
What we need are pastors and church leaders who can say, I hear that question. I think it's fair. Let's find the answer together. Because I think people want to follow that person. They want to be led by a person who's willing to help them find the answer. They don't necessarily have to have the person who has the answer already.
Yeah. And so two things that brings up for me. One is maybe rewording what you're saying here is like, we need pastors and leaders who are more concerned about getting it right than being right.
Yes.
So if your primary motivation is, I want to be on the right side, not be right, or I want to get it right or find out what's right, as opposed to being right, because that opens it up to exactly what you said. I hear that question. I think that's fair. Let's find the answers together, because then the posture isn't, if you're watching us on YouTube, it's not me versus you butting heads. It's you and me turning side by side and figuring this out together. And so when you're, even built into the way that you wrote that, it seems like there's like I can read that with a hint of defensiveness or potential. Like somebody questions me as a leader and I go, oh, that's fair. I hear that question. That's fair. Let's look for it together. As in, like, okay, I might be wrong on this. Let me lower my, my arrogance, my whatever, my defenses, and let's go at it together. As opposed to like, oh no, my personal, my identity is not wrapped up in my viewpoint. My identity is wrapped up in Jesus and trying to get it right. And once we take that identity from Jesus and put it into my view on Jesus, which is a very nuanced and razor thin line, I think that's when we're doing what we've been seeing. And the church needs to heal by pastors saying, I am this is my current view at the time with the information I have, but I am more interested in getting it right than being right. And I think that our current system is set up so that I have to be right because I am the source of the truth. I am Moses. I'm the only one that can
I'm the visionary.
Yeah, I'm the only one that can go on the mountaintops. I'm the only one that's got the stone tablets. And essentially, when you're doing that, and again here, I mean, I'm looking through my window right here, and I can see the giant Mormon church. You are making yourself into Joseph Smith. Oh, I got the tablet. I can look, and I'm the only one. I'm the only one that can tell the truth here. And it's like, so what is it, man? Is your church going to be built around you, or is your church going to be built around Jesus?
And what that takes and what it requires is something we talk about a lot, but unfortunately in our evangelical culture is not modeled very much. And that is humility. Because I say what I'm about to say has the potential to sound negative, but I say it with an understanding that I hope you hear in my voice. When people come to look to you for the answers, it's very easy to become prideful in that position. It is a natural thing to say, hey, these people are looking to me for the answers. That's pretty cool. I must be pretty smart. I must have some answers, and to feel good about yourself. That's a natural thing to do. And so it is much more difficult to remain humble when people come to you asking for answers or searching for something, because they are inherently putting you on some type of pedestal by asking you the question. But what we have to do as leaders, what we need from our pastors, our elders, our church leaders, is to remove yourself from that pedestal, to step off of whatever place people have put you on, so that you can walk next to them and with them to find the answer, as opposed to being the voice on the hill speaking down to the crowd with the answer.
And let me jump in here real quick. And I know, like, we're only on one of four, so par for the course here. The last thing I'll say on this, I promise, is, I remember we've shared this story before, but I remember being a part of a pastor's group, right, when in Northwest Ohio, and one of the pastors that had a more like inner city urban. I mean, it was a black church, so inner city urban. I don't know if it was Pentecostal or Southern Baptist or whatever, right? Like, whatever, charismatic.
So many things I could say.
Whatever.
If it's a Black Baptist church, they're charismatic anyways.
Let's charismatic. Okay, so as a mayonnaise ranch dressing white guy, I am
Methodist,
right? Like, I am not. I don't know. Anyway, but what he was saying, because we had a really real discussion, it was like, okay, why do you have the preferred pastor's parking spot? Why do you have a really nice car when the rest of your congregation is pretty poor? Why do you have, and he said, because if I don't look like I'm successful, then my people will think that God has not blessed me. Therefore, I am not, right? I'm not a man to follow. So there is even this sense of having to keep up appearances, right? If I'm not right on this, if I don't have the right opinion, people aren't going to follow me. So it could be all the way from I've got to dress a certain way, like Furtick's giant, $5,000 pink sweater. Like I've got to dress the right way too. I don't know, who was it? What's the anyway? I won't go into that. All the way down to like I have to be right on every issue, and even if I'm not actually right, I've got to defend it so that I can be right, so people will follow me.
Friends, that's what we call foreshadowing, because we will get to that point in number 4. But before we get to number 4, we have to go to number 2. And so number 2, the second thing we need, pastors and leaders who are open to being vulnerable with their struggles while leading out of uncertainty instead of trying to model everything being perfect. We need pastors and leaders who are open to being vulnerable with their struggles while leading out of uncertainty instead of trying to model everything being perfect.
Let's remind everybody of the framing. If we want the church to heal,
Yes.
we need this. Okay, continue.
I think we all can agree the world is broken. We all feel that in whatever way we feel it. So for pastors to act like the world is great and following Jesus is nothing but rainbows and unicorns, that's not real life. There definitely has to be guardrails around what, how much, and when pastors share their vulnerabilities, or even a small group leader shares their vulnerabilities. But by opening up and letting people see the real life behind the pulpit, behind the Bible study leader, behind the elder, whatever it is, we allow the people we are leading to know it's okay to have things going on as well. We let them know that they don't have to fake it either. When's the last time you heard a pastor say they had a bad mental health week? When's the last time your small group leader said they were struggling to find the joy in their faith? When's the last time you heard someone who is a spiritual leader of some sort say they trust Jesus, but they really don't know what he's trying to show them right now? So instead, what we normally get, go ahead.
Yeah, I know you're going to go here, but caveat. When was the last time you heard it as present tense? Because
yes,
instead, what do we get?
Instead, we get the version that's already fixed.
Yeah.
We get the sermon illustration once the experience is over and the story has a happy ending. But the reality is most of us are still in the middle of our story right now. Most of us are living the bad mental health week, the struggling to see what Jesus is doing right now. Whatever it is, like more often than not, our lives are not being lived from the place of victory where everything is okay. We are still in the battle on a day-to-day basis. There are times, and they should be held on to as tightly as possible, where everything is going well and you're experiencing all the good things that Jesus said he came to bring. But unfortunately, those times are very few and far between. What we need for the church to heal is leaders who we can look up to who say, yeah, I'm right there with you. But you know what? I know a way out, and here's how we're going to get through this together. It reminds me of the West Wing. This is a story that's shared in multiple places, but I first heard it on the West Wing when one of the characters was thinking he was going through a bad time, and his mentor basically told him, I'll spare the whole story, basically said, hey, you're in the hole. I'm going to jump in the hole with you because I know how to get out of the hole. I've been in the hole before. I've gotten out of the hole. And so I want to come down there with you so that I can help lead you out together. And we don't need leaders who are just looking at us down in the hole, trying to tell us how to get out. We need people who are going to join us in that so that we can get out together, and they're going to help lead us out while pointing to Jesus through it all.
Yeah. And this whole thing brings up, I was looking at the lyrics, but One of the former singers from Caedmon's Call, Derek Webb, he's got a song called "I Repent," and it goes, I repent of parading my liberty. I repent of paying for what I get for free." But then this is the good part: "And for the way I believe that I'm living right by trading sins for others that are easier to hide." Because what we get is either the fixed version, or the other thing too that we see with a lot of pastors and their downfall is they'll admit to some other sin. Like, what was it in the guy in, what was it, Nashville or something, where it was like
He said that he was burnt out,
burnt
and
out,
could not lead from an empty cup,
couldn't lead from an empty cup. In reality, well, he was having a massive affair or something like that,
banging
right?
his assistant.
Yeah, so it's
Got a
like,
divorce and married her.
so it's like, oh well, I can't admit to something I'm struggling with way before the big downfall, but I am going to admit to something that's safe. Like I do remember also too in a previous church experience, being told by people in leadership that, like, you shouldn't be preaching when you're preaching and teaching. Do not preach or teach on something that you are currently working through. You need to be preaching and teaching from a place where you can look back and use that as what God has done in the past tense, not what God is doing as in like fixing you or what you're struggling with or what you need to lead from a place of confidence. You need to lead from a place where you can actually point people in the right direction, as opposed to just like, I'm tough, or, I'm in a tough spot, not I'm tough.
I understand where that advice comes from. And I think it has good intentions, because when we're leading out of our mess, we sometimes say and do and think things that maybe aren't the most clear. But I am convinced that vulnerability is a superpower. And by letting people in and showing them what's actually going on in a safe, healthy way with guardrails around it so that you're not doing anything that's unhealthy,
Right.
I think that's going to lead to people wanting to follow you even more.
Yep.
People will trust you even more. People will relate to you even more. You open yourself up to people taking advantage of you or trying to take advantage of you. So I understand why you don't want to do that as well. Like, I understand the dangers in it, but there is some, like, I'm not a pastor, I'm not a church leader, but the episodes we have done on here with our little following, where I have talked about my anxiety or I have talked about the things that I'm struggling with, we get more messages from that because it lets people know that's normal. It lets people know that there are people that you may look up to me as someone who is a step or two ahead of you on this journey. And if I'm still struggling with it while being a step or two ahead of you, then maybe it's okay for you to struggle with it where you're at right now. And it takes vulnerability to get to that relatability. And I think there's power and there is life and there's healing in our leaders being just a little more vulnerable than they have been in the past.
And part of it might be too, like, like you said, a little bit further ahead of you on this journey. I've heard that so many different times. And, when you're looking for I got to look for my Paul, and where's my Timothy, and all this kind of stuff of like trying to find your mentor and everything, and like looking up to people. The problem is, I think we keep thinking about this journey, quote unquote, or the path being one that is in
as something that can be completed,
or even in a straight line. When
yeah,
I like to think of it as like a pie chart, that for all the gamers out there, it's like your attributes. And so, yes, I mean, because my kids are 12 and 13, I may be a little bit further on that journey than Jonathan, right?
mm-hmm.
But I have two boys, and he's got a daughter, and a son. But right, like I am, you're way further along in parenting girls than I am, right? It doesn't matter. I may be a little bit older than you, so I may be, for quote unquote, further along in this journey on that. But like, there's a number of different attributes that we aren't as far as someone else. So I think also realizing that your entire life isn't linear, and as a pastor, as a leader, as someone that's meant to be a Paul, quote unquote, that we hear all the time in the church, like, I think we are bought into the lie that somehow this is like a level system where, oh, I'm a level 41 right now. And it's like, no, I'm a level 41 when it comes to like years, age, and
Right.
maybe a level whatever when it comes to marriage or parenting or.
Well, it's like, think about Madden. It's like you have a 99 speed rating, but you only have a 32 passer rating.
Right.
Because you're a wide receiver.
Right.
And so I'm going to look at you as a wide receiver, but the quarterback has a much better throwing rating, but might be slower.
And I think with the pastors specifically, you could have 99s across the board, but some of you are running around with 35 awareness. We just lost a bunch of audience members, but like you're sitting here with like an awareness of 35, and it's like, what does that mean? That means
You've got 98 on doctrine.
Yeah.
You've got 97 on theology.
We should do Madden.
But it's
Madden,
a 62 on relatability.
Yeah. Bonus episode, Madden ratings for popular pastors. I'm writing that down.
But that's what it is. Like, we all have attributes that can be improved on. And I think one of the things that we need in order to heal as a church is to increase the vulnerability rating and bring that up a little bit. That doesn't mean you have to, like, you can't be as knowledgeable to doctrine or theology or polity or whatever. It's just being a little more real, letting people in just a little bit more, so that you can let them know that it's okay to be where they're at. All right. Third thing. This is the last one we need from pastors. We need pastors and leaders who model what I call convictional integrity with a graceful acceptance of others. I think we all want to be led by people who have convictions in their faith. That's like, any type of leader needs to have at least some conviction. But I also want that person to model the graceful acceptance of others that Jesus had. And that's where I think the tension comes in. On one hand, you've got this openly misogynistic theobro cultural Christianity that attacks anyone who disagrees with their interpretation of Scripture and questions that person's faith in Jesus. But on the other hand, like on the opposite end of the pendulum, you have a response to that which says your convictions are up to you and everyone has to interpret things on their own. And the problem with that is that when I interpret something different than you interpret it, and one of us starts to exclude the other. So on the, for lack of a better term, the left side of Christianity, it's said that they're open to all ideas unless you're as open as they are. If you're not as open on a topic, well, you're wrong and you're not going to be a part of this. What we need is somewhere in the middle. We need church leaders who have strong conviction, who know what their convictions are and know why they have those convictions. But they also have a graceful acceptance of others on issues that are not what we used to call primary issues, or maybe an application difference. We need leaders who have strong theological convictions, but realize the application of those convictions to real life can have multiple, sometimes competing applications. A German Christian is going to apply their faith to government in different ways than an American Christian. You know why? Because Germany has the freaking Nazis in their past.
And because they're not real Christians.
They come from a totally different...
You try to tell me that they got Christians in them other countries over there? I thought the only Christian was an American Christian with the eagle and Jesus riding in on a velociraptor right next to Abraham Lincoln and George Washington. America. I don't believe it. I don't believe there's Christians in other countries. Not even Canada. I do. I believe that there's a lot of Christians in other countries, but I think that's where we come from, right? Is like this idea that American Christianity is the Christianity. So even this idea that like, oh, someone could have another perspective because of X, Y, or Z, right? You know, anything else like that. Oh, yeah. So anyway, I was going to go somewhere else. I don't need to, but like that's an acceptance already. Is like there could be a different perspective out there. And as you're talking about this, it brings up my favorite analogy of all time is the tomato and the fruit salad. You get I'm going to bring it up as often as I can because Theobro, yes, theologically accurate, tomato is a fruit. But some of you Theobros are out there just campaigning on shoving your disgusting tomato into a fruit salad, right? So yes, you can say, I have convictional integrity that indeed tomato is a fruit, but you have to have that graceful acceptance that says, hey, bro, maybe I don't want your tomato in my fruit salad next to my pineapple and my strawberry and my grapes. Leave the melon out because melons are for heretics, but like anything else like that. Okay. So another analogy in this way is what we, if you go to any men's conference or any marriage conference, it's always about men sacrificially serving their women and everything like that. And what are we told as men? It's like you can choose one of two things. You can either be right or you can be happy, right? So in some cases, when we think about our relationship
A
with
false
Jesus,
dichotomy.
right. But I mean, think about it. When we are told by the church that Jesus is the husband and the church is the bride of Christ. And so there's this marriage analogy, or God is the father and we are his children. Think about how many times technically men, yes, you may be right on an issue, but is that the right thing to bring up right now? No, it is not. Or with your children. Yeah, tell me how many times, and maybe it's not you with your kids, listener, unnamed listener, but think about with your parents. How many times did your parents, were they just convictionally integral and had zero graceful acceptance for your situation? And how did that affect your relationship? Because I guarantee the parents that were super convictionally integral about whatever their tomato was being a fruit in their kids' lives, it grew up with a relational divide. So if God is the father,
Can I give another silly analogy
yeah, go for
or
it.
metaphor here?
Whoa, are you saying my tomato's a
Loading
fruit analogy is silly? Come on, man. Go ahead.
loading the dishwasher.
Careful.
My wife has very hard convictions on how the dishwasher should be loaded.
Right.
They are very different than mine.
Yep.
At the end of the day, though, we both agree the dishes need to get clean.
Sure.
How we do that's going to be a little different.
Uh-huh.
We agree the dishwasher cleans the dishes,
Okay.
and the goal is for the dishes to get clean.
Okay. Uh-huh.
Our application, this is such a terrible metaphor.
Yeah.
Our application to get that done is going to look a little differently because we see the dishwasher and we see the geometry in loading things
Yep.
slightly different.
And if you are Jonathan's wife listening to this, it's hello.
She doesn't listen to this. She doesn't listen. She'll tell you she doesn't listen. She says she lives with this, so she doesn't listen to it. I'm starting a new
You
podcast
ruined my
in January.
joke,
No. I'm starting a different podcast, a sports parents podcast in January. She heard me working on it. She goes, I might actually listen to this
Oh
one.
my gosh.
It's because I'm interviewing other people. I'm not talking as much on that show.
Well, I'm on it. I'm on this one. What does that say about me? I talk at least 49% of the time. According to that one review that we had, that you talk way too much, even though I think they mixed up our names and because it's really me, Anyway, actually,
Okay.
that brings up. So that I don't know if you've seen that podcast that the couple that the only way he can talk to his wife about sports is if he relates it to like gossip, and so he brings up how the different NFL divisions are like the Kardashians, or they're like certain people like that. So it's like, man, the only way we can get our wives to listen to this is if we talk about why we're right on the loading the dishwasher.
I think we've belabored the point, though. The idea we need convictional integrity with a graceful acceptance of others. And then the fourth thing we need, this is where it gets to us. We need Christians who are willing to be led by leaders who are open to wrestling with questions, who are open to being vulnerable, and who display a graceful acceptance of others. Because the harsh reality is that it would be absolutely ignorant to think the American Evangelical Church got to where we are today solely because of leadership decisions made in back rooms by shady pastors and unqualified elders. I know some hold that view, and I'd be fine telling them that directly. The truth is, those things were allowed to happen because church folk were okay with them happening. church folk wanted the man of God. They wanted the pastor who had it all together. They wanted the pastor who told them exactly what to think, how to think it, and who they needed to shun.
We want Barabbas!
So
Or the golden
while
calf. Barabbas, golden
what
calf.
leaders do,
That's what
I
we
was
want.
trying to just move past.
No,
just trying to move past.
No,
I
you
was let you
can't.
do your thing, and I
You
was going to
cannot.
I was going to keep driving.
You cannot. We're sitting here and we just want a golden calf with Barabbas riding the top of it.
While it is true that what leaders do in moderation, their followers do in excess, there's a flip side to that same coin. Leaders do in excess what their followers allow in moderation.
Ooh. Amen.
If we not only accepted, but almost required our leaders to be open to questions, they'd start being open to questions. If we told them, if we made our churches a safe place for our pastors to share their vulnerabilities, they would be more vulnerable. But you want to know the dark secret to this? Pastors are the loneliest people on the earth, or in the church, I should say. They're the loneliest people in the church. Pastors have fewer people they can be vulnerable with than any other group inside the church, because everyone knows someone who was a pastor who shared a vulnerability, and then someone took advantage of that to make their job and their life worse. Whether that was getting them removed from their position or they had a power play, whatever it is, pastors are scared to be vulnerable because they don't want church folk to take advantage of it. So for the church to heal, we have to be accepting of a pastor who shares a vulnerability. We can't use that as a way to manipulate them and get what we want.
Yeah, so going back going back to the analogy of the inner city pastor, it's like what chicken or egg situation there on the arms race over, this this display of wealth, a display of God's blessing. Is like, if the congregation was like, hey, listen, we know that you're flawed and we know that you're a man of God and you're after God's own heart, but you're just like us. Like, we're okay without displaying all of these.
You don't have to drive a Cadillac.
Yeah, you don't have to drive a Cadillac. And, like, we want you to have a good parking spot, but man, we don't need to have the closest one to the thing to show that you're something, special above all of us, or whatever the title of bishop or anything else like that. Like, as a congregation, if we gave more grace to pastors and allowed them to wrestle with these things, it's a both and. You have to have a pastor whose heart is ready for that and who wants to be open and vulnerable and humble. But you also need the support of a congregation that is willing to walk alongside them and support that as well.
For the church to heal, we also have to be accepting of pastors who have different applications than us. That doesn't mean we don't push back when we think something is wrong or dangerous. But what it does mean is we don't expect every person in leadership or in the church to agree with us on everything either. We're not always right. Just because we have a different application issue or way to apply our theology doesn't make us more right than the pastor. So if we want them to admit that they should be accepting of our application, we also have to be accepting of their application, as long as it doesn't run contrary to the Bible as well. Like, if we believe there is freedom in application on some of these things, then we also have to be okay with people who have different applications than us. The dang disciples didn't agree on everything, and they walked with Jesus every day. How the heck are we so arrogant to think everyone should agree with us or we can't follow Jesus with them? So yes, there is part of this as Christ followers ourselves, who, let's be honest, the majority of our listeners are more in the moderate to potentially left of center when it comes to Christians. We have to do our part in this as well. This isn't an us versus them. for the church to heal, there's going to have to be an acceptance from both traditionally conservative pastors and moderately liberal people inside the church who have shifted that way over the last 8 years because of where the church has gone. I'm not saying we are to blame for where the church is. I think the blame lies much more on the hard right side, but to abdicate any responsibility that we have had in the sickening of the church would be wrong as well.
I'm sorry, I don't have anything for that. That was really good.
Is that the first time this has happened?
Yeah, I think you landed the plane and I was on board. I was listening.
I'm just watching the screen waiting for Eric to say something. He's like,
you stopped. I was like,
yeah, that's good. Okay.
All right, good. Yeah, that's good. All right, cool. That's it for today.
All right. Well, I mean, that's never happened before. So we're going to end the show there. But before you stop listening,
before we start, there we go. We were landing the plane. Now we're coming back up. We're going to circle the runway again. Let's go.
I'm not giving the rate us reviews. I want to tell you what's to come next.
Okay, let's go. Yeah.
We want to update you on season 12. The plan is for season 12 to kick off Monday, February 3rd and run through Monday, March 24th. In 2025, in the past, we've done 3 8-episode seasons. We're probably only going to do 2 8-episode seasons this year with the monthly bonus episodes between those. So not quite as much as in the past, but still regularly getting stuff out there to you. The theme for season 12 is honest conversations people aren't having. So this isn't going to be a teaching season. This isn't going to be a change of perspective. It's just stuff I think we should be talking about that I don't see us talking about. Things like, I would trust Jesus more if following him didn't require trusting other people as well. Or, I know heaven's going to be great, but I don't want to get there anytime soon. Yeah, it's true that one day in his courts is better than 1,000 elsewhere, but I don't want to be there anytime soon.
Right.
One of the episodes we have planned there are theological positions I wish I was wrong about. Or there are pieces of Jesus's character that I don't necessarily like. These are conversations that I think are things we should be talking about, that if we are honest with each other, they're things we wrestle with. So that's what season 12 is going to look like. And here's the fun part, at least from our self-aggrandized position. We're not sure how it worked out this way, but the final episode of season 12 will be the 100th episode of this show. So we're going to have a super self-centered and self-indulgent celebration because that sounds fun for us. And we've had a couple hard seasons lately. So we'll give you more on that throughout the season. Eric, before we get into the close, what do you want to say to the people to close out 2024?
Well, I want to say that for next season, we should have enough time. Well, and I don't know, maybe Jonathan disagrees, but we should have enough time. If there are questions that you're coming up with or conversations that people aren't having that you're like, I would love to hear more about this. I think about it in the way of like, and maybe all of you are way more spiritual.
Bonus episodes.
Yeah. Or bonus episodes or anything else. But I think there's an aspect that it brings up to my mind is like, and many of you don't know this because you're way too spiritual, but like when you go to your group or your Bible study or whatever, then you find like the one cool person in the Bible study that you go to like Panera or wherever you go afterwards, or probably Chick-fil-A, whatever. And then like you talk about the real things. What is the conversation that you're having with either your spouse or the cool person that you're talking about on that side? That would be interesting to kind of hear, because I think we've got a couple of good topics, but I'd love to hear from some of you. But also, if you've got
better ideas than we have, I would love to swap out what we have for what you have. So send those to us. Eric is at EricW712 on all the major platforms. I'm at Jonathan_Caron on them as well. You can email them to hello@tensionpodcast.com. Yeah, that's it for this year. If you like the show, please leave us a rating and review wherever you listen to podcasts. Apple Podcasts lets you write up a review. That's a huge help for us. If you listen, or if you're watching on YouTube, hit that like, hit that subscribe button. If this helped you, if you think a friend would enjoy it, that's the single biggest way that you can help us grow the show, is by sharing it with a friend. But that's it for us. We hope you have a great rest of the holiday season and a great January. We will see you on Monday, February 3rd. See you then, everybody.
Things that we can have convictional integrity without grace or acceptance for others. Number one, Christmas shoes, objectively a terrible Christmas song. Number two, Mary did know. She did know. Mary knew, no matter what you think. I know that you or maybe your aunt really loves the pentatonics version of it, and your church might be playing it every single year for the past 10 years. But she knew. You just have to know that she definitely knew. Okay. Both of those things in the Christmas season, we can have convictional integrity over, and we can draw the line that no grace or acceptance is allowed.
And fruitcake is terrible. Goodbye.